Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on our webinar, Building Retool University, a technical deep dive. Before we get started, we want to do some housekeeping notes. The first is this webinar is going to be recorded, and we will send a recording to everyone after the webinar. In addition, please use the Q&A feature to ask any questions you have during the webinar. I'm here to answer those questions. Daniel, who is helping me out today, will also at the end chime in and provide us a summary of any questions that I didn't answer. Feel free to ask those questions at any time during the presentation. Otherwise, we'll hit those at the very end. If you have any experience, or if you're experiencing any technical difficulties as you're going through this, please send a message in the chat to Daniel Kim, or you can email him at daniel.kim, K-I-M, at retool.com. Okay, so let's jump into today's topic. We're here to talk about Retool University and how we built it and what are some of the constituent components. So to start off with, I'm going to talk at a high level about the business challenge that we were targeting. I'll then go into architecture. I'll talk about some retool topics or parts of the implementation behind the scenes, and then we'll provide a summary. So from a business challenge, I joined in May of 2023, and the goal for me coming on board as the customer and partner education lead was to identify how we could educate retool customers and partners. So the focus here is on really trying to provide a scalable upskilling platform. So the target here is we want to educate people, meet individuals where they are. Right now, we're primarily focusing on individuals that have basic programming experience or some fundamentals, all the way up to full stack developers. And we want to provide a variety of resources to educate that is both engaging and practical. So my own learning journeys, I've used video contents, I've used traditional books, I've used slides, listened to podcasts and others to help educate me. So the variety of media that is available today gives us an opportunity to meet people where they are and where effectively they learn the best. So in terms of the content here, we have a little slice of the Retool University, which focuses on coursework in the form of paths. We have labs, so those are step-by-step instructions. We have some basic videos, our developer conferences, along with build-alongs, for example. We also have additional resources like Retool Center of Excellence, the documentation, our blog, which provides a lot of great content, as well as some other features. As we're thinking about Retool University, we wanted to think about how do we want to present this? What are kind of the core tenets? And for us, it's around self-service. We want to try to make it easier for you to be able to consume this content when you're ready, wherever you are. We wanted to do that in a no-cost way. So other than having a license for Retool, if you're working through higher level features like enterprise or business, the platform itself in education is at no cost to you. And that was important to us. We have a variety of people coming from a variety of places. So we wanted to make sure that was a core component. And then on top of that, we're working on continuing to diversify our content. So short form, medium form, and long form content, and then new ways of learning, especially in our AI generative areas where we can effectively build things and create things on the fly. So these are areas that we're investigating and looking at. So self-service, no cost, and diverse content were kind of the core tenets that we focused on. From a personas perspective, right now we're focused on individuals that may hold the title of an architect or do architectural work, people that are maybe administrative focused, or builders. Those are effectively the three personas that we're trying to target here. And in doing so, that kind of guides us down the different types of content that we're providing. So let's talk about the architecture in terms of Retool platform, how Retool University was constructed, leveraging that platform, and the supporting solutions that we use to deliver that content. So the backbone of this is a series of Retool apps, multi-page apps that we're using either for the user experience or an administrative experience. In addition to that, we're leveraging workflows, which is a product that we have that provides automated processes, whether you invoke it via a webhook, a schedule, or more recently, we have something called query triggers. So you can use events to drive and invoke those particular workflows. Those workflows and those apps have to access information or data, and we're using a Amazon Relational Database or RDS service to effectively store and maintain information related to the content, the courses, the banner that we have, etc. In addition to that, though, as we have your interactions within the apps themselves, the primary drivers are WorkRamp and Docusaurus. So WorkRamp is our learning management system. This is where we effectively define our content for the architect or the admin or the developer paths. And those particular paths are then displayed within your courses tab. As you're working through those courses, you may decide to link out and look at the labs, and that's hosted in Docusaurus. This is our documentation solution that is Git-based. It allows us to develop lab examples or step-by-step instructions and combine that with videos and arcade step-by-step videos. So the combination of Docusaurus for the hands-on and WorkRamp for the knowledge management checks, the guided paths that you walk through are really the core components that you're interacting with as you're going through our content. When you complete the content, we're leveraging something called Credly. Credly is a digital badging service that organizations like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and others use to indicate successful completion, and they provide validation of the credential. And this is how we're informing you that, hey, you've completed a path, for instance, a developer path, and you have a Credly credential that you then receive because of that. And you can use this to share with your teammates and your organization on your LinkedIn profile or via email as an example. Another key component that's really important is notification within Retool, the organization. So as you're working through these courses, if any issues arise, we're leveraging Slack, which is our core messaging platform, to inform me of those particular problems so that we can jump on those and resolve them. It also gives us an indication of people enrolling or people completing their paths. This is a healthy metric for us to kind of monitor and use for notification purposes. Separate from that, in our first incarnation, we didn't have Salesforce integration, but we have integrated it since to support different customers that we have that are leveraging the Retool platform. So Salesforce integration became an important component for us to determine whether we're dealing with customers or partners, and we use that as part of our workflow processes. So at a high level, this platform leverages apps, workflows, resources. I mentioned the database, Salesforce. We're working with HubSpot as well. It also leverages forms. So I just announced today a certification form that give an idea of whether you're interested in formal certification so we can collect that data. So we're leveraging forms. We're also leveraging Retool AI as well. So pretty much the majority of product that we provide today is somehow viewed within the Retool University platform. Okay, I'm going to pause there and just check in to see if we have any questions before I proceed. So no questions yet. If you do have questions, please post them into the chats.
Hey, Chris.
Oh, I missed it. Go ahead. Sorry.
So there's one question. Is there any document that certifies a developer as a Retool expert?
Yeah, that's something that we're trying to gather data on right now. The badges that we provide indicate that you've been educated, you've completed the basic education and knowledge checks for a particular path, and that's what we provide today. Secondarily, we're looking at, by reaching out to the Retool University audience, to determine if a formal certification is something that they're interested in. Formal certifications quite often go through proctored third parties, where you'll take it at a test center or maybe at a user conference, or maybe remote proctored via home. Examples of this would be like AWS Solution Architect Associate, where you would go to a testing center to take that. So that's something that we're collecting data on right now, and we look to use that data to then inform us this year to determine if that's something that will be in the plans. It's a great question. Quick question I just saw as I'm posting through here, question around Amazon Relational Database versus PostgreSQL. So I'm using RDS PostgreSQL as the actual database. There is also Aurora that some of our customers use and leverage. So that is what I'm using today. So it is a Postgres database just hosted by Amazon. Can we have a demo on the workflows or any user guides on how to achieve these workflows? So I can't show these particular workflows in action today. I'll walk through and break down the pieces of those because user information data is flowing through these workflows, so I need to be cautious of that. But I can definitely show you how we constructed them at a high level. And then if you have further questions related to that, There are examples within Retool University around building a shipment workflow, a ticketing workflow, and these leverage some of the same constructs. All right, let me go back to the slides here. So great questions, keep throwing them in there, and I'll go back and we'll look at further questions that were asked earlier. Um, so kind of going off of what was just asked about, can we see the workflows or what's going on behind the scenes? I'm going to do that at a higher level to share, okay, how is this pieced together? What is it using? What is it comprised of? And this will kind of inform you then of how we're truly leveraging Retool and dogfooding through that. So the first thing when you experience Retool University is that you access a sign up page or a login page. And this login page is using something called public apps. This is a feature or functionality that was released in 24. It allows you to customize the login, the claim invitation, the email that gets sent out for people that are going to then join a particular Retool application. So by default, Retool applications require that you invite the user. This allows people to self-invite. So you start off with a login page, and on the login page at the bottom, there's a sign up selection if you don't have a login. And when you click on that, what it does is exposes an email where you can type in your email information. And when you then hit submit, that triggers the invite workflow. And the invite workflow is the base workflow. When you build a login page, you say, hey, I want to customize the email that goes out with us, or email white labeling that goes out with us. It's the basic workflow that comes from that. And then you just tweak it to fit what it is that you need. So that invite workflow, what it does is it consumes that email address, and then it effectively creates via Mailgun an email that gets sent with some basic instructions and information. It also sends a parameter that's part of the page that redirects you back to Retool with a claim invitation. A claim invitation basically is saying, hey, I've been invited to Retool. Here's my invite details. And we then ask you, okay, that's fine. Fill in your first, your last, other details effectively. And when you do complete that, let's go ahead and save that. So that invite workflow sends that email. And behind the scenes, Retool is using Mailgun. And then that email, once it's been processed and you click on the accept link, you get redirected to a claim invite page. And that invite page asks again, first, last, and some other details. And when you hit submit, we store that in the Amazon RDS database. So that information is now stored. We also store it inside of Retool, the platform. So now we've validated that the user credentials have been presented back. They have input their information, their contact details, et cetera. And now that user goes from invited to an actual user in a permission group. Permission group is a way that we organize users and give you privileges to just certain apps, like the login page, as an example. And once you do that, and we've stored that information, we then redirect you back to the login page so that you can then enter your information. So typically your email and your password. And once you do that, then you're placed into the Retool University default page, which then presents courses and all the other stuff that goes with that. So I'm going to pause there and let me take a quick peek and see if there's any chat messages related to this. Okay, good question here. How we integrate with SAML or SSO for the login. So in my particular case, because I have users coming from all over the place, I'm using Retool to manage that. But for users that have an SSO provider, such as Okta, Active Directory, etc., you can go as an administrator into settings and effectively enable SSO. And we have two options. We have SAML and we have OIDC. So OpenID Connect. And depending on your provider, you can then go and configure your SAML IDP credentials or your OIDC credentials. That'll create a connection between you and that provider. And then you would use that provider, identity provider, to then manage your users. And when the user logs in, what they'll be presented with, instead of a username and password, they'll be presented with an SSO button that they can click. And that'll effectively redirect them to the SSO provider. You authenticate there. And then if authenticated, we're informed that, hey, they are in credentials behind the scenes or metadata behind the scenes is passed to Retool. So that's all documented within our documentation at docs.retool.com. You just put in SSO or SAML and it'll explain how to do that. All right. Second topic, LMS integration. So now we've logged in And at this point in time, I want to interact with Retool University. So the default page we put you to is, I believe, overview, which kind of gives you an overview of the platform. But if you select on courses, what this does is it effectively renders our learning management system work ramp. So within the courses page, it's an app or a page because it's multi-page. And within that page, we have an iframe component. And that iframe component is configured to securely connect to the LMS provider using a LMS auth workflow. So at the bottom, you'll see that a little workflow runs to effectively present the credentials of your user to the LMS provider. LMS provider confirms that you exist within the system, and then it returns back the content, which is displayed in the path screen. So you'll see the different paths like Center of Excellence or Architect or Admin, et cetera. And then you can click on those. And when you're clicking on those, you're effectively working with a WorkRamp LMS system, even though it's within an iframe and even though that's within a Retool multi-page application. So at a high level, we're dealing with Retool apps, a workflow to authenticate, and then the learning management system to effectively render that coursework. Okay, quick peek and see if we have any questions.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
I think we had some in the Q&A doc. I don't know the Q&A side. But there was a question where query triggers mentioned as part of the setup, as in app side event-driven query triggers.
I haven't used them yet. So query triggers, if you're not familiar with it, is a new feature or functionality. It effectively allows you to integrate with Kafka or SQS, simple queuing service from Amazon. And that allows you to have streaming or queuing based solutions. When events arrive in those, we can be listening for those and then use that to trigger a workflow. So if you have a scenario where you wanted to monitor events that are flowing through these systems and have Retool workflows trigger off of that, consume the message, and then use that data to then do something, that's where query triggers would come into play. So prior to this, workflows had scheduled, which is what I use right now, and webhook. Those are the two that I'm using in Retool University. But a third, query triggers, is now available, and I believe that's in beta. It's a great question. All right.
Sorry, there was one more. I think that was related to
ahead.
the beginning part. What was the rationale between switching from Redocly to Docusaurus?
So Docusaurus is the default platform that we used or that we're using today. Prior to that, I'm not sure what was being used, if it was Redocly or other. So that is something I can't answer. I'm using resources provided by our technical documentation team. So the plan here was to make sure that whatever I create is aligned with what our technical documentation is using. So Docusaurus is the solution that they have today and have had for quite a while now, actually. So I can't answer it directly, but it's a very effective Git-based documentation tool. So aligns very nicely with what we're doing today. All right, so let me talk about another example. So a feature that I added to Retool University, not in its initial phase, but later on, was analytics. So the idea here is to allow a student to figure out, based on their progress through the course material, so this is under the courses tab, what have they completed, what grades have they received, and have they received any certification, or rephrase that, have they received any Credly badges for being educated, not for being certified? That's still TBD. So within the Retool University, when you select analytics, the flow that we have goes as follows. So on a scheduled basis, once a day, I pull down, using a workflow, information from WorkRamp. So WorkRamp keeps tabs of all the paths and courses that have been completed. Take that information, and effectively this is like an ETL, extract, transform, load style of workflow, where I'm pulling down the data. It's a paginated API, so I'm using our workflow process to basically pull that information down. And once I receive it, I transform it, I merge it, and then I place it into the database. Once it's in the database, an individual is able to then use the analytics page to then query that. So what it uses is the current user that you're logged in as to identify who is the user, and then pulls information for them specifically on both coursework, paths, and badges. And that's what then you can display and view through. And if you've completed or you just started a course, you'll see it's at 0%. If you complete, it's 100%. and then somewhere in between it determines a relative value as to how far you are through the course. So that particular process runs on a daily basis once a day. So the information is behind, it's not real time. We do that for the purposes of making sure we're not exceeding the API limits of WorkRamp. So that's something that we have embedded, and it provides quite a bit of value, I believe, to our customers and to our administrators as well. All right, let's see if there's any questions related to that. Do you have any single source of truth that docs and WorkRamp pull from? So in terms of WorkRamp, if you haven't used it, WorkRamp provides effectively a content authoring system. And within that, you can effectively manage your version via metadata tags, et cetera, versions of what documents are being released. Typically, we do in our organization is I'm using Google Docs to build out the content initially, share that with team members in collaboration, do that all through Google Docs. And then once we get to the point where we feel that the content's at the right level, effectively migrate that over to WorkRamp. And then add all the the appropriate audio and video and other content, knowledge check questions, things of that nature. So that's typically how we go through it at this point in time. WorkRamp continues to innovate, so we'll see additional authoring tools and mechanisms that'll provide better version control capabilities and sharing capabilities. They have some basic stuff there, but we use Google Docs within the organization and have found that to be most effective. All right. What happens when you complete? So we're going to wrap up this one, and then I think we'll just kind of summarize what's there and then take Q&A. So in terms of a student that has completed a course, we then need to inform them that hey, you've completed the course, we're issuing you a Credly badge. So what happens at this point in time is WorkRamp has a series of events that it can emit, and we provided a webhook. And that's where the workflow effectively receives information from. So course is completed, WorkRamp LMS emits an event, it hits a webhook on a workflow, and the completed pack workflow, what it does is it takes that event and that detail as input and then reaches out to Credly using their REST API to say, we want to issue a badge for this particular path for this particular user. And what that will then do is it sends an email to the user, which you can see here on the left. It's one that I received when I completed one of the courses. The student can then scroll down and accept that. And what it does is redirects them back to Credly. And at Credly, you can create a user account where it can collect badges, not only from Retool, but any other provider like AWS, Azure, et cetera. And once you accept that, that becomes part of the badges that you've completed and accepted. And then you can decide on how you want to share that. So that LinkedIn is a common one, email to maybe your team or your boss as an example, et cetera. In addition, once we complete that path, the completed path workflow also makes an entry into the database. And that allows our analytics page to then render the appropriate badges that you've completed as well. So we want to show it not only to yourself and the Credly account that you have and how you decide to distribute it, but we also want to show that internally within the analytics page so that you as a user can see that, hey, I've received this badge, et cetera. So this is using a combination of multiple services, WorkRamp to trigger it, workflows to handle the overall communication to the database as well as to Credly, and then leveraging the Credly lifecycle to distribute the badge to you. Okay, let's take a quick peek, see if there's any questions on that. Just using iframe post challenges regarding events within iframe and things that you want to control. So right now, the iframe that we're using, the level of complexity that we have is effectively doing the authentication. That's really the only event that we're exchanging between the Retool application and WorkRamp. And once you've been authenticated, the WorkRamp screen takes over, and effectively you're interacting with the content in WorkRamp LMS directly. So there's nothing in particular there that we have outside of that. Okay, so let me go to a summary here. So what are the next steps? What are we looking at beyond? So you heard me talk a little bit about doing the certification survey. Would love to have you fill that out. I don't have that on the bulleted list, but that just went out today. So if you go to Retool University, you'll see there's a banner. Please fill out the survey, give us some feedback on what you think, if it's important to you or not. But the big thing I would say this year is moving a lot of the content to be more video focused. So leveraging Loom as an example. We also leverage Arcade, which allows you to select and navigate through. You'll see that on our documentation where there are arcade videos that kind of gives you a little bit of that muscle memory of where to click within the Retool application. And a combination of both of those we feel is a good start to convert some of the text-heavy content to that. The videos themselves we're going to keep pretty short, 2 to 3 minutes. Another component that we're focusing on is making sure that all the paths are broken out, or all the courses and the paths are broken out. So you can pick them individually. You don't have to go through the whole path. So right now we've got that for Center of Excellence. We have it for Architect. I just did that the other day. We have it for Admin, and we have it for Advanced Developer. Developer is the last one. We're going to be redoing Developer as well as improving the other coursework with, again, videos and your shorter sets of information so that you can consume it a little bit better. So you get to see that as you go through the spring into the summertime. Those particular courses roll out with that style. In addition to that, some of the feedback I got from some of our enterprise customers around trying to find content that matches what you want to do. So the use of Retool AI and vectors is something that I'm investigating, whereby you can put in a search criteria and then have it feed back to you content that's relevant for what it is that you're trying to do. So that's something that we're playing with right now, and we'll be releasing. And then finally, Retool Explainer. This is something that our DevRel organizations put together. I think would be really valuable. It allows you to take a completed Retool app and have it auto-generate instructions on how it was built. That's something that I think is very valuable to just provide different ways of learning and going through the content. So that's something that we're going to figure out how to put into Retool University, and you hope to see that this spring. So that's next steps. Let me go back to the chat, and then Daniel, if you've seen anything in particular that I missed, please let me know.
Yeah, there was one question that I think came up. It says, replying to the last question about single sourcing, it sounds like you built out Academy content completely separate from docs. So there are some duplications in content. How do you work with your docs team to make sure the university and docs stay in sync?
Yeah,
Is that where your tagging structure comes in help?
yeah, that's a great question. So there are a variety of different things that we're looking at. Tagging is one of them, some metadata around the docs. The second is coordinated content. So as we release like quarterly releases, we're working on some content now where we have specific information that's tech doc related, supporting labs or Retool University related, marketing related, et cetera. So having kind of swim lanes that each of those sets of content reside within. That's something that we'll be working on this year so that we can have these quarterly releases and relevant information to upskill you on query triggers or multi-step functions or other features that we have in beta as an example. So that's something that's there. In addition to that, we want to think about how we get knowledge into your hands rapidly. So we're working internally to better understand how we can get that information. And as part of that, like you mentioned, duplication, I find that there's a tutorial or a section here that I find in university as well. Those are things that we hope to then rationalize and then reduce so that you should see improvements there. But the main effort was to get the university stood up in September. The second is to get all the content aligned in video format, and then you'll see improvements around that deduplication effort as we go forward this year. Yeah, but great feedback. Thank you for sharing that.
Cool. Here is another one. Since you released Retool University, can you talk about its reliability and how many users are in it currently?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Retool University, we've had one outage since it went live. We've actually had Retool University in kind of a private beta since March of 2023. We released it publicly in September. And the issue that we had, and you run into this with integrated applications, is that the applications themselves require API keys or security credentials, and one of those timed out. And that required us to effectively reissue or reauthorize a new OAuth key to then be able to integrate with that particular platform. So there was an outage window of or a period of time that got triggered by accident, how to resolve that. And that's been effectively the only outage that we've had to date on the platform. We've got thousands of users in the platform right now. So that speaks to the overall resilience of the Retool platform. University.retool.com is just one of our cloud SaaS hosted organizations. So it's using the Retool cloud for its current implementation.
Cool. This next question is, I've noticed typos and grammar issues in Retool U. Is there a best way to report these while I'm going through classes, or
Yeah,
can I help fix
it's
the
a great question. I am fallible. So, and I'm a mechanical engineer by default. So English is not a strong area, but tools like Grammarly and others can help. Yeah, anytime you find any issue, whatever it is, an experience that's bad, content that isn't written appropriately or other, please let us know. And you can do that by selecting the feedback button within Retool University. So in that feedback, you can just say, hey, I'm on this particular path in this particular course, this particular section, and I found this. Could you fix this, please? So we get a lot of feedback through that mechanism, and that would be a great way to do that for us. If you work closely with a TAM, a technical account manager, or other Retool resource, you can reach out to them as well and just say, hey, I found this issue or problem, and they can inform me as well. So we have internal channels for support purposes as well as feedback. So either of those works, but again, please let me know. We're going to have mistakes. There are going to be ideas that you have that are better than ours. Would love to hear them. So more than often, just hit that button, put whatever it is that you're thinking about, and let us know.
This next question is more about analytics, but how do you track analytics user experience while using Retool U?
Yeah, so in terms of analytics right now, we're keeping it pretty simple in terms of registrants that come into the platform, understanding how far they go through the coursework, the paths, et cetera. Are there any particular courses that people do not complete that could be indicative of either the content's too challenging or is not something that they're interested in, as an example? So WorkRamp provides us a base overview of data related to the coursework, the completion, the status, the grades, any kind of surveys that are filled out, things of that nature. So we leverage that. Independent of that, we leverage Credly, as I mentioned, and Credly gives us a way to share the badge to the user and then determine if they share that out to the wider organization. That just indicates whether they're interested in promoting that, as an example. So those are two bits of data that we use currently. In general, though, I think more and more information will be used to track and effectively determine the quality of the content. So example, when you go in the Loom videos, you have give thumbs up, give feedback, you don't like it. That type of information is really valuable to tell us whether things are hitting the mark or not hitting the mark. And that helps us then further improve those particular courses or videos or other.
Awesome. We have another question. It does seem like Retool University accounts are different from the Retool platform. Is there any specific reason not to allow login with Retool credentials?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there are different ways of authenticating with Retool. So some of our customers are self-hosted, meaning that they are managing their credentials in their own IDP, Okta, Active Directory, et cetera. And that's something that I cannot get access to. Other customers are using cloud accounts and also using their own IDPs. And again, I can't use those credentials. So if you are using a cloud account and you have creds and you've set up your own organization, so say company xyz.retool.com, those creds are things that I cannot access and I can't use to then authenticate within the Retool platform. We have had people ask about opportunities for integrating with their IDPs, and those are things that we're thinking about or looking into to see if there's an opportunity to do something there. But right now, we're trying to keep the platform divorced from anybody else's platform so that we can make sure that the information in your credentials and information are kept controlled by us and audited by us. So it's a great question. We have had people ask about that, and that's something that we'll look into. And there may be some feature functions in the future that Retool adds as well that allows us to do some more delegated authentication or something along those lines.
Cool. We just have a few more questions. How are the colors, fonts, and styling defined initially?
Yeah, that type of information was defined by Retool.com's rebranding. So Retool.com was rebranded. If you didn't see the prior, and you go to the current one, we have a lot of very rich dark colors. And we wanted to make sure that Retool University married up with that. So when we started, it was originally called the Education Portal back in March and had a very different color scheme. Fonts, et cetera, were all different. They were based on our current website at the time. When the site changed, we then worked with the designers who were using Figma to export out the colors, the fonts, et cetera, and styling. And we use the theming feature within Retool to basically update that to match. So the look and feel that you see there is related to what we had in retool.com and the designs that were built in Figma to help articulate colors and fonts and styling.
Awesome. There was a question around, can we set up our own learning platform with Retool University? I think maybe they're asking, can they build their own learning platform with Retool?
Yeah, so in terms of building, I mean, what I did was a compositing of different tools. So yeah, obviously you can do that. If the question is, can we take Retool U and put it into our own organization? We have had questions about that. I will be meeting with some customers to better understand what the requirements are around that. A lot of times customers have vetted learning management systems that they are using in-house. And for them to be able to propagate the content out to their internal employees, they need to have it inside of that. So those are conversations that we're going to start having this year with very large enterprises that have that requirement. I don't have an answer for you right now, just because of the fact that we are leveraging WorkRamp. So there's certain restrictions on what you can export and consume, but solutions like SCORM, which is a way to develop content and then propagate it into different learning management systems, would be one approach. And those are things that we'll be looking into. But it's a great question, TBD on that. If you want to build your own, we've got a blog that we'll share, post this that kind of talks a little bit about how it was built. And if you want to talk one-on-one, we can always set that up as well.
Cool. And then there was one about, maybe this is the last question we'll take, is around the Retool Explainer. Will Retool Explainer also be able to auto-generate how to use docs?
It will auto-generate a tutorial inside of Retool explaining how the app was constructed. It is not built to generate, as far as I know, like a DocuSource output as an example. But at the end of the day, I mean, any of these tools can be used to generate any kind of output that you'd like. But Explainer itself, I believe, from what I've seen so far, and more to come on this, basically inside the Retool application generates a tutorial. And I believe there's an export option, maybe like a PDF or something along those lines that will then give you a portable format that you can share. So you can then provide, here's how it was created, and then here's the actual artifact. So you can check it out and navigate through it. We think that the value of this is being able to provide different ways of learning. So sometimes it's really tough when somebody built something and then they leave. This gives you a way of understanding, like, oh, how do they approach this and how do they build these things and how are they connected? What are the event handlers and how could I do this myself from ground zero? So that's the purpose of it.
Cool. I think we can end here.
Great. All right. So I wanted to thank everybody for joining both Daniel and I today to learn a little bit more about Retool University. We hope to have more content, whether it's in the blog format or maybe webinars in the future, as we build out various things. Would love to have you provide feedback on the certification survey. As I mentioned, just log into Retool U. You'll see the banner. Fill out the form if you get a chance. But I appreciate the feedback that everybody's provided today. So reach out to us, select the feedback button, give us information as to what you think would make it better. This is early days, so we hope to improve this across the board, provide you more engaging content. But again, appreciate your time today and your questions. And Daniel's going to provide a update with the recording and the blog itself as a follow-up. But again, reach out to us at any time. Thank you.
Thank you.